right. The recording has started and I hope you can see my screen. If you can give me a quick confirmation about the screen.
Yes, we can.
Perfect. So we can see the agenda for today, what we prepared today, what my colleagues that will take over the mic have prepared. Pratibha and Ruchika, they're here with me. We prepared the walkthrough, the mass contract upload, and we are wrapping up the disclosure report section with the liability and maturity analysis. You might remember we started in the past session to introduce to you some of our reports, and in the November session, we spent a bit of time walking through month-end processes and reports. With the month-end process in mind, just a quick reminder, the recommended approach is to plan ahead for the events and make sure that you perform your lease modification, your creation of new contracts in the first part of the month. Then in the second part of the month, you dedicate the time for posting of the uh, operational periodical transaction, making sure that you allow enough time to actually perform the month end, and a little bit with December in mind that it's shorter than other month. I hope you have that sequence in mind, and uh, we'll hope that everything goes smoothly. At the end of this presentation, I included some resources, and as a reminder towards some of the resources that we have, the customer portal, previous recording for office hours, training materials, user guides, release notes, and so on. They're going to be there for you to walk through, and that's uh, that's the end of the administrative part. We can start with the topics that we have prepared for today. Only one last note: if ever we spend more time that we initially planned for the mass contract upload, we're gonna um, reschedule the second session for January. So please make sure to ask your question to give enough time to go through this important topic. And without further ado, Pratibha, the mic is yours.
Thank you, Kathleen. Good morning, everyone. Hope all are doing well. So for today's session, we'll be talking about mass contract upload. There will be a walkthrough, and so mass contract upload is used to import multiple mass lease agreement or contract. And for example, if we have like 200 contracts that we need to enter into the system, then we can just fill up an Excel template and import them instead of going to the UI and creating contract one by one. This is a very effective, efficient tool. Um, and
Pratibha, sorry
yeah.
to interrupt. Maybe you can switch to sharing your screen.
Oh, I'm so sorry
Um,
about that. Yes.
no worries. All right. We can
So
see
we
your screen, so yes, go on.
so yes, and one thing that we need to note is the system can help with your configuration validation. Non-mandatory fields will be checked by the user, just like how we do with the financial terms and conditions. So let's go to the system, and from the main menu, we can go to import export information, and we have to select mass import MLA and contract. And here we need to enter a staging area. We can select the system into which the contracts are being uploaded. And my import type is, it can either be master agreement or contract. So for now, I'm selecting contract. And I'm naming the staging area. And submit. Now I can select that staging area upload file, and I can download a template here. This is the template. We have around 12 tabs, and all the red ones are mandatory, and the grayed ones are non-mandatory tabs. So we have the introduction, and we have the revision history of the template, and our first tab is contract. We can see we already have these data. These are just for examples, and we can delete them. So we have the contract ID. We need to assign an ID here. We can use something that is different to the ranges that is set in the backend. Or if you're using a similar format, we need to go to the manager page and edit the last generated number. So for now, I'm using something that is unique. Let's say,
Sorry, Pratibha, can I ask you to maybe increase a little bit the zoom? So, okay, that's perfect. Thank you.
so for contract ID, I'm assigning a contract, and for this session, I'm just uploading 2 contracts. So I have, let's say, and with our 2. And the contract display ID, it can be the same ID, copying and pasting that. And MLA ID, it is a valid activated master lease agreement. So for this training, I'm using one of the master agreement that is already in our system and which is already approved. And the year is based on your configuration, and it can maybe keep we can maybe keep the contract start year. So let's say 2022. And I can name it over here. So all the red ones, all the columns with red headings, those are mandatory, and these are not mandatory fields. So external contract, we can include IDs that are from other application, for example, SAP. But this is not mandatory, so I'm leaving it as such. I can give a description of this contract. So I can copy the name and the lease type ID. It is based on your configuration. So as per my configuration, I want my contract to be lease contract fixed. So my lease type ID is 01. And I have the contract category ID, amendment date. Amendment date are the ones if we have any event, this will be populated. And the currency ID. Let's say my contract is Canadian dollar. And my principal position, again, based on my backend detail, my principal position, I have 01 lessee. So keeping it as 01. This is not a mandatory field. And we can select the form of lease ID, joint venture lease type. Again, it's all based on your configuration, and you can fill it up if required. Lease area ID, lease business ID, and company ID, these are mandatory fields. And lease area may have several business units defined, which in turn may be linked to multiple companies. And lease departments are defined for each company and may have multiple lease groups. So we need to make sure we fill in the valid combination based on your configuration. So let's say my lease area ID and lease business unit ID and company ID. Again, based on the configuration, I'm selecting 0001 for North America, and my lease business unit, I can select something from here. And I have the company ID as well. So I'm selecting these three combination. And lease department ID. Yes, but
Sorry, Pratibha, it's me interrupting you. I just wanted to add that Pratibha is going back and forth to what we have in our internal system for demo purposes and the configuration we have. It's very important that as you populate this field, you are referring to your own configuration, to your own structure, and to the relationship that are creating between companies and business units, for example, and among all these items and structure. So this is the reason why Pratibha is going back and forth between the documentation. But please keep in mind that this is something that you always need to refer to.
thank you, Catalina. And now we have the trading partner, group 1, group 2. All these are not mandatory, but you can fill it up based on your configuration and the company policy. Do you have any question? Okay. The contract phase should always be initial, since, for example, when we are creating a contract, before approving them, the contract phase is always initial. So we select that. And the reason code, it's not used at inception. If there is any event, it will be shown over here. Approver, approved date, time will be assigned by the system. And ready for lease component, it should always be true. And that's it for this tab. Our first tab is complete. Now we can go to the second tab, lease determination. This depicts this session of the contract creation. So we need to select the answers for different questions. So, yeah.
Sorry, Alana has a question.
Yeah, sure.
Hi, if you go back to the contract tab and go over to the right, one of the things or to the left, sorry, all the way to the contract.
Yeah.
Yeah, so one of the things we know is the contract ID and the contract display ID can't be the same. And so what we've done is we have a 12-digit contract ID, and we've added a 13-digit for contracts that we upload. So we add like a 9 right at the end. And it's caused some confusion from the users, but that's why we kind of set just a standard of, adding a 9 or whatever, because this is the one thing where the user's like, well, we don't want to do that because the number's different, but the contract ID will be the 12 digits, but the display ID, what you see on all the screens in SN, will be that 13 digit. And that's how we're getting by it. I didn't know how you guys are getting by, or if anyone else has an idea how they're getting by using that.
Well, we can have the contract ID and contract display ID as same.
Okay, we always got an error. Maybe that's changed or updated, so I'll have to try that. But yeah, what we've been doing is just adding a 13 digit.
So Alana, maybe I can add here because Pratibha is using an ID that it's outside the configured range. And when you're using a
Okay.
different range, then the
Mhm.
ID and display ID can be the same. But what
Okay.
I assume is that in your case, you are using the same range as the configured one. So then the
Yes.
display ID has to be different. And
Okay.
we do present and in the guide for contract uploads there are about 3 options that you can use. We
Mhm.
do recommend the one where you're using a different numbering range than the one that you have in your configuration, because in that way you use the same ID and display ID the same. But it's really like we've seen all the situations, so it's
Okay.
really up to each case.
Yeah, because our auditors require us to use the range, right? So that everything has
Yes.
the next
Okay.
thing. So
So
maybe I can get approval for them to move and have an off range for those that we upload and then a regular range for those that we don't. So that might work. Yeah. Perfect.
yeah. So that there
Thank
is
you.
also what Pratibha was mentioning at the beginning. You can also use the same contract ID, display ID when you're using range, but then you need to manipulate range in the backend, which I don't know if it's better or worse. So it's really something to be seen.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you. That's interesting. Thanks.
Yeah.
So back to lease determination. First line is an example, so I'm deleting them. And I'm copying the contract ID from here. And we have various combinations here. And to get lease contract fixed, I need this combination. So I'm using that over here. And now to contract partner. Again, we have an example. I'm deleting them. And I'm selecting copying the contract ID from the previous tab. And I'm pasting it under contract ID. And for contract partner ID, we need a unique ID. So usually I just copy the contract ID and add a alphabet to it. And the partner ID and partner role are based on your configuration. So if you go to the back end, you can see the partner role. For lesser, it's 10. And I have the different partner IDs over here. Lesser. And for now, I'm selecting one of them. So going back to the template, I'm pasting the partner ID and partner role. No, partner contact, it's not a mandatory field, but you can enter the partner vendor details over here. So I'm deleting the examples, but for now I'm leaving this empty. Now base the user notification, this this is based on this area of the contract creation. So based on our configuration, we need to have 4 roles for me to continue to the next step. So I'm copying the same user for both contract and having a unique ID for each of them. So I'm selecting the contract ID, the first one, then pasting it over here. And for the second contract, I need the same details. And I'm pasting the contract ID. And I'm having a unique ID just by adding alphabet or something like that. So now we have unique ID for each line item. Now we have another mandatory field, accounting. This is where we set down all the details of the contract. For example, the contract rate, if we are using IBR, CPI ID, all those details. So I'm deleting the example again. And I'm copying the contract ID from here. And let's say I need my contract to have like 2% contract rate. So I'm selecting 2, and I'm not using IBR. So I don't have to fill it up, or I can just say false. And CPI ID, based on our configuration, 01 is none, 02 CPI local, and 03 CPI global. So for this session, I'm selecting 01, that is none. And these are mandatory based on what we answer here. If we have 03, that is global, we need to set down the reference date indexation ID. Or if we have 02 local, we need to set down the current index rate over here. For now, I'm not using a CPI, so it's none. And embedded derivatives, it can either be true or false, but again, it's not mandatory, so I'm leaving it blank. And my compounding frequency, again, based on my configuration, it can be 02 monthly, 01 daily, 04. So I'm selecting 01. Or 02 monthly. And if I want my 360 convention, we can set this as true, or we can leave it blank, or we can say it's false. So for now, I'm saying I need the 360 convention. And again, cost center ID, again, based on our configuration, I have.
Sorry, Pratibha, Viviana also has a question. Can we take it?
Yeah.
Thank you. Hi. Quick question. Instead of copying and pasting from the contract ID tab as an example, if we put formulas, so will it drop the import? Will it fail? Like as an example, just equal to my first initial contract ID, as in this case. Will that work in the import or?
No, the Excel file should not have any formulas in it.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem.
But you can use the formulas and then copy paste value once you are done.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So for cost center, again, going back to my configuration, I have the cost center details over here, and I can select this one. WBS ID, it's not mandatory, and we can use if the cost center ID is not used. And functional area ID, business area, profit center ID, and functional area ID and profit center ID, they are not mandatory, but based on your configuration, and it should have direct relationship with a relation to the chosen cost center. But again, it's not mandatory, so I'm leaving it blank. Network ID, segment ID, track cost, internal order type, internal order ID, all those are not mandatory. Even vendor ID, it says it's mandatory, but we can leave it blank as well. And we have arrears in payment. If we are using it, it can be true. And if you're not, we can leave it blank or say it's false. So for this session, I'm not using arrear payment. So I'm leaving it blank. And that's it for accounting. And we can move on to the lease component now. Again, we have the lease component ID, display ID, and contract ID. So for now, I'm deleting this example and I'm copying my contract ID. And I'm just adding a letter over here to make it unique. And I can copy paste the same for display ID. And I can name them. Let's say, and the same description. Quantity, I can say I have 1 and 2, and unit of measure is each for both. And asset class ID. Again, based on a backend detail, I have so based on my backend details, I have this asset class. And I can set down the fair market value or leave it blank. And if you want to, for example, if you have more than 1 unit quantity, we can say its bulk asset is true. If you want to consider this as a single group, and we can also set down the useful lives, 100. And that's it for lease component. We can move on to the next tab. And this is not a mandatory tab, so we don't have to fill it up if we don't have a carryover balance. So, for example, if for my second contract, I have a carryover balance, I can select a carryover balance ID here. So, first, I can copy the lease component ID. And I can have a unique ID over here. I'll just add 2 alphabets. And let's say my carryover balance, the asset gross book value is 1,000. And my accumulated depreciation is 500. And I can have it for both company currency and lease currency. For me, it's the same. So I'm just copying it and pasting it over here. Rest of the columns are not mandatory. We can set down the asset accumulated depreciation value for the current year. And we have extra form fields that may be filled in for contract under IFRS 16 in disconnected or hybrid system. So users may enter carryover balances, impairment information over here. So that's it for carryover balances. Now we have the last mandatory tab for financial terms. This is where we enter the terms and condition of the contract. So I'm deleting the example and I'm copying the lease component ID from here. And I'm creating a unique financial term ID just by adding a letter. And my term type, this is based on my configuration. So my first term is base rent. So I can search for the base rent, and my base rent is configured as 01. I can select that. So 01. And my and the name is base rent. And I can select the lease amount over here, 1,000. And non-lease amount if required, or you can keep it as 0. And amount frequency, again, based on my back-end information. My amount frequency, it can be 00 for one time, 05 for year, 04 for month. So I'm selecting 00. And similarly, my payment frequency, I'm selecting monthly, 01. And I can set my first payment date. Let's say I want it from 1st Jan 2019 to 28. We can select if the payments are made at the end of the month, we can say it's true, but since for me it's the 1st of every month, I don't have to fill it up. And we have guaranteed residual value. If you have a guaranteed residual value, you can fill it up over here. And my terms, I can select the same first day, ROU start date and end date is same as my payment dates. And for the terms and months, usually I use the formula date this, and I'm selecting the first expected start date and end date, and I'm selecting M to see the number of months. And same for the remaining number of days, I can say use the formula. Excuse me. I can use the formula date this, expected start date, contract end date, +1. So this is the terms, months and day. And since we can't take formulas, I'm just copying and pasting value. And we have the lesser notification date. Again, it's not mandatory, so I'm leaving it as such. And my category for standard term as per my configuration is 01. And I don't have a lease, non-lease amount, so I don't have to fill this up. And it's early buyout, it's false. Now, if you want more than, let's say for one of my contract, I have around 4 or 5 terms. I want to add supplement for 1 month, let's say incentive, indirect cost, or prepaid rent. I can add few lines over here. And I can copy paste. I can just add some letter and create a unique financial ID for each term. And I'm copy pasting the same lease component ID. And let's say I want incentive, free rent, for example, and I want the free rent to be for 2 months. I can select the term type 50 based on my configuration. And I can say incentive free rent as the name. And since it's free rent, we don't have a lease amount or a non-lease amount. And the payment frequency, I can copy paste from the base rent. And I can select the dates at which the period at which we have the free rent. So let's say February and March of 2022. Again, it's we need to see the date. So it's for 2 months and 0 days. And I'm selecting the same first payment date and last payment date. And the category is incentive, so it's 04 based on my configuration. And again, I don't have to fill all other details. Now, the third term I want is, let's say, indirect cost, initial indirect cost. So for that, the term type as per my configuration is 60. And I have the name initial direct cost. And here for initial direct cost, prepaid rent, and all those details, we don't have a lease amount. We have a non-lease amount. So I'm saying my lease amount is 0. My non-lease amount, I paid $1,000. And I'm using the same amount frequency and payment frequency. And I'm selecting the first payment date. And the term and month, I'm setting it as 0. And the same start date and end date. Since it's a non-lease amount, we need to select the category. So for in the initial direct cost, my category is 05 as per my configuration. And since it's a non-lease amount, I need to say what my distribution type is. So I'm distributing based on percentage. I'm using percentage method. I'm selecting that. And we need to set down the percentage, how much percentage we are paying for. Let's say I'm paying this 1,000 for insurance and utilities. We need to give the percentage details over here. And the next one, let's say I already made a prepaid rent. The term type, again, as per my configuration, is 30. And prepaid rent, again, for prepaid rent, we don't have a lease amount. It's a non-lease amount. And I'm saying 1,000. And I'm selecting the same amount frequency. And first payment date, last payment is the same. Terms, months and days are same. ROU start date and end date, again, are same. And the category, as per my configuration, is for prepaid and it's 02. And again, I'm using the same method, percentage. Now, for the second contract, I just have a base rent, so I'm selecting the same base rent detail as my first contract. I'm saving them. Now we have to set out the non-lease amount distribution details. Again, it's not a mandatory field, but if we have a non-lease amount over here and we need to distribute it, we need to fill this out. So for non-lease, we have these two. So I'm selecting the financial term ID. And I'm adding one alphabet or letter to make it unique. And based on my backend detail, say I am using that amount for both maintenance and utilities, for example, I can select that. So for my first, for the indirect cost, I paid 500 for utilities. So I'm selecting 50% here. And amount is 0. And based on my configuration, utilities is 06. And the rest, I'm keeping it for insurance. So 01, 50. Had we selected amount here instead of percentage, we can give the amount here instead of percentage. But for now, I selected percentage, so I'm keeping it as percentage. And for the second contract, we don't have any, for the second term, the prepaid rent, let's say I paid that for insurance. I can say it's 01 and my amount is 0 and it's 100% for that particular category. And then we have the contract additional and lease component additional. If we have if these are enabled in your application, we can use this to add extra information at contract and lease component level. For now, it's not mandatory, so I'm deleting the examples here. And our template is complete. We can save this. And we can then go to the application, to the staging area. And I can upload file. I can browse that document. And now I can validate the file. So if there is no issue with the file, the Excel type, or if there is any tab missing, then there will be some error messages. But since we don't have any issues, we can import the file. And once the file is imported, we can get the data validated. At this point, if there is any issues, so over here I have an issue, payment financial term. So I can go back to the template. So it pinpoints where our error is. So my error is with financial term. And for 03 and 04, the payment frequency is invalid. So let me see my payment frequency, financial term. So for 3 and 4. So my payment frequency.
You will need one time, so 00
Yeah,
for
so 0,
those.
0. Exactly.
Yeah.
So selecting my payment frequency as 00, one time. Okay. And then I can upload it again.
So just to maybe explain a little bit more, Pratibha used a couple of terms like incentive and initial direct cost that you can introduce at the beginning. And some of those terms can only have the frequency one time because you enter them at inception, and they will have the payment date first and last equal to the start of the ROU. But it was a good exercise to see how the system is reacting, how you see the error message, and you can correct it by going to the specific line.
Thank you. And once the data is validated, we can merge the data. Once it's merged, the contract will be available in our landing page. So, and refresh. These are the contract I imported. And that's it from my side. Do anyone have any question? Okay, I'm handing over to you, Ruchika.
Thank you, Pratibha. So I'll be discussing the disclosure reports, the liability and maturity analysis report. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes, you can.
Okay, perfect. So the reports in Nakisa, we have several types of reports. We have basic compliance reports. Upon some of them we have already covered in our previous office hours, as Karina mentioned before. And today I'll be covering the disclosure reports for maturity analysis and the lease liability. So the reports, again, they display the necessary information required to prepare the disclosures according to your accounting standards that you use in the company. And they can be prepared for the contract or the target currency, depends on the use. There are minimum filters that are required for the reports, which type of report you would like to have. The fiscal variant of the company can be calendar 360, or it can be fiscal variant 445 or any other. The other thing we need is currency, the accounting standard, and you can select the year you're like to report to show you the results for. The lease liability report. In the lease liability report, this gives us the information for the future finance charges split between the short and the long term, as well as the long term and short term principal liability for the period selected. It does not work for the low value short term and the service contracts, nor does the maturity report as well. So I can show you an example here, and I can show you in Excel as well. It gives a summary. Let me show you this, the Excel. So I have already generated a report based on the selection that I had initially made here. I had selected in the disclosure reports section, which we come to this section by going to the main menu in the compliance report section and disclosure reports. Thereby, I selected the lease liability report and I made my selection. I'll show you my selection on the Excel. I selected the reports to be running for the year 2022 for the period 1 until 12. I selected the system, D1, DIS1. I selected the lease area, business unit, and company code. So you can make the selection as detailed and filtered. as required. At the same time, we have to ensure that the selection can give us the currency, which they must have a common currency in order to give us results. So I have selected the asset class equipment. And as I mentioned before, the first section will give us the general selection of the contract. It is covered in the blue section here. And it will give us multiple details. All the information that we have given here, it will be split for each contract ID. And going on the right hand side of this Excel, we will see now the section gives us here the details in the contract currency. I have selected USD for the report. So this will show me the contract currency. And here in this section, it will show me in the target currency. In this section, I have selected the USD, so it will show me in USD. We can see the columns here. It shows us the information. The columns are identical for the target currency and the contract currency. So the sections given here, the contracts is the same columns that are given in both sections is the short-term future interest expense, the future interest, the accrued interest, as well as the short-term principal closing and the long-term principal closing. We have the identical columns in the target currency. On the green part on the top, it gives us the summary for each class. For this report, I had selected only the equipment. Thereby, it only gives me one line item for equipment. Does anybody have a question for the lease liability report? Okay. I will hop onto the maturity analysis report. The maturity analysis report, this provides us the information for the next 5 years for the contracts and the amount that is due. In this section, I selected all the asset classes. The remaining parts of the selection criteria, I left it same as the lease liability report. I would like to show you the section of the summary first. So in the summary section, we will see that we have multiple items because the report is classified. It's showing us for the different types of asset for our disclosure reports. And then going back and showing you here is the main thing for the maturity analysis report. It shows us each contract and the amount that will be due for each the next 5 years. So the maturity analysis report is giving us the next 12 months as compared to the maturity analysis by calendar year. It gives us for the fiscal year. So if I show you my slide for 1 second. So here we see that the maturity analysis report will show us the next 12 show payments for the first column for the next 12 months, and similarly it will show the other 12 months following for each next 5 years. Whereas if you look at the maturity analysis report by the calendar year, it will show us for each year, starting from Jan 1st to December 31st. So the example I'm showing here is that the first column will show the remaining payments in the same calendar year as a selected period date. So for example, if I choose the period date 6 and my selection is starting the first period 2023, ending 6th period 2023, the first column will show me July 2023 up to December 31st, 2023. So it'll show me 6 months. Unlike the first report here, that was maturity analysis report, which shows me the next 12 months. One is probably more used for the finance statement presentation. We can see that it shows us what is due exactly next year. In this example, we don't see much difference because I chose the same periods, 1 and 12. And That's it. The remaining parts, the first section is always showing us the details of the contract that we selected. And then it shows that in the contract currency, the green part, the columns are identical for the target currency. And then we have the summary. The summary is always in the target currency, only by the different asset classes. Anybody has a question?
Yeah, this is Erica. So, we're just learning to run the maturity analysis. Is there any way to go back? Like, let's just say, like, we've had leases added this year. And we wanted to see like our total commitments for 2023. Because I think when we run it, it's showing right the future payments as of like a certain date.
Are you
I don't know if
looking
that
for
question made sense.
are you looking for the short-term payments for the next 2020, like for the financial statement 2023? You want to show how it's the short term for next year?
For this year, like what they were. Is there a way to go, like, go back and say, okay, this was all our lease commitments for 2023, for the year for 2023.
Which includes your new leases as well that you've added, right?
Yes. Yeah.
I can ask Carolina if she has the answer for that.
So you can always set up the end date as the beginning of 2023 or run it for December 2022. I guess you need a different point, a different starting point, right? You need to see the future payments as you look at them from the end of December 2022.
Yes. Yes. And I think the last time I can go back and rerun it, like if we ran 2022, the next year was 2024, like went to 2024. So I couldn't see, what we had in 2023 after we made our additions this year.
It shouldn't, but if if ever you see something like that, you can always open a ticket and we'll look into that case. So what I can suggest is to run it as a period end December 2022, so you can see the future as of January 2023.
Okay. Yeah, I'll go back and rerun it.
If ever you don't see that, please open a ticket.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Erica.
You're very welcome. Right, so I guess we're at the end of the capsules that we prepared. So, Ruchika, as you are sharing the screen, at the end of the slides, we have some details about the different type of resources that we have in Nakisa, our portal, our website. We do have um, a new website, so please check it out. Our blog and all the sections where you can find resources. So this will be just a reminder to a different section where you can find important or interesting information. And with that, we really want to thank you all for being with us through all this year and wish you a happy holiday season. And we hope to see you all in 2024.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good holiday. Bye.
Bye. Happy
Thank you.
holidays.